Tonight you will lock your front door, climb into bed, and fall asleep inside a box made of drywall and false confidence. You have walls, a locked door, a mattress, maybe a blanket, a little fan making white noise in the corner. Maybe your phone glowing beside you like a tiny anxiety rectangle. If you get hungry, there is a kitchen 12 steps away. If you get scared, there is a light switch within arm's reach. Something moves outside your window. You ignore it. Something bumps in the hallway. It is probably the pipes, or your neighbor, or the house making one of those mysterious sounds houses make, because apparently buildings also need hobbies. Now strip all of that away. No walls, no lock, no flashlight, no phone, no hospital, no metal, no emergency number, no door between you and the dark. You are somewhere in ancient Africa, long before cities, long before farming, long before anyone had invented the deeply comforting concept of being indoors. You are lying near a fire that is starting to burn low. Around you, a few other people, some sleeping, some half awake, some pretending to sleep while listening very carefully to the night. And somewhere beyond the firelight, something is moving. Maybe a leopard, maybe a hyena, maybe something bigger, older, and far less interested in your personal growth journey. Here is the question: how did humans survive this? Because on paper, we should not have. Remove the technology, and a human being is not exactly an intimidating animal. No claws, no armor, no venom, no night vision worth bragging about. We are soft, slow, mostly hairless apes with exposed necks, complicated knees, and babies so helpless. They basically arrive as unfinished software. Put one unarmed human alone in the dark against a large predator. And nature does not need a long meeting to decide how that goes. And yet here we are, the descendants of those fragile animals, asking this question from climate-controlled rooms. So what happened? The answer is not one thing. Not just fire, not just tools, not just living in groups. It was the combination, a strange stack of advantages that, separately, look almost unimpressive, but together turned humans from easy prey into one of the most annoying animals a predator could possibly choose to attack. And to understand how that stack was built, we have to start with the uncomfortable part. Ancient humans really were prey, not metaphorically. Actually, the fossil record is not full of gentle hints here. It contains direct evidence that early human relatives were attacked, eaten, dragged, bitten, and picked apart by other animals. The famous Tong child, a young Australopithecus africanus from South Africa, is thought by many researchers to have been killed by a large bird of prey. The damage around the eye sockets resembles the marks made by eagles on monkeys today. That is a brutal thing to imagine, but it matters, because it reminds us that early hominins were not born into the world as main characters. They were part of the food web. At Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, researchers have described crocodile bite marks on hominin fossils. One extinct crocodile species from that landscape, Crocodilus anthropophagus, lived around the same time in places early Homo habilis and Paranthropus boisei. The species name basically means human-eating crocodile. Subtle science. Very subtle. At Swartkrans in South Africa, the old idea that early hominins were mighty bone-wielding hunters ran into a problem. Many bones in those cave deposits had been accumulated by carnivores. Our ancestors and relatives may not have been the terrifying hunters in that story. They may have been the hunted. So if you had a mental image of ancient humans standing proudly above nature from the beginning, erase it. Early humans had to earn their safety, and the first way they did that was almost embarrassingly simple. They stopped being alone. A lone human is a snack with opinions. A group of humans is a problem. This is one of the oldest rules in predator-prey dynamics. Many animals reduce risk by grouping together. More eyes means better detection. More bodies means any one individual is less likely to be targeted. More movement, more noise, more confusion, more warning signals. For early humans, group life was not just social. It was defensive technology. Picture a predator approaching a sleeping camp. One person, the situation is straightforward. 15 people, it is not. One person hears a branch break, Another sits up. Someone grabs a stone. Someone else shouts. A child starts crying. A half-asleep adult throws something in exactly the wrong direction, but with tremendous confidence. Suddenly, this is no longer a quiet ambush. It is an event. And here's the thing about predators that horror movies get completely wrong. Predators are not monsters that attack because the soundtrack gets dramatic. Predators make calculations. Every hunt costs energy. Every injury matters. A broken tooth, a damaged eye, a torn muscle, even a deep bite from a desperate animal can be life-threatening when your survival depends on catching food tomorrow. So when a predator looks at a group of humans, it is not seeing one soft animal. It is seeing several unpredictable animals that can scream, coordinate, throw objects, defend each other, and possibly turn a simple meal into the worst decision of its week. That was the first shield, not strength, numbers. But numbers alone were not enough, because a group standing in the wrong place is still a group standing in the wrong place. Which brings us to the second layer. Ancient humans weaponized geography. They did not just sleep anywhere. Whenever they could, they chose defensible spaces, caves, rock shelters, high ground, places with limited approaches, places where danger could only come from one or two directions. Think about what a cave actually is. It is not just shelter from the rain. It is a security system made of geology. Your back is against stone. Nothing can sneak up from behind. One entrance means the night suddenly becomes much easier to manage. That matters more than it sounds, because predators thrive on surprise. Reduce the angles of surprise, and you change the entire equation. A leopard in open darkness is terrifying. A leopard trying to squeeze through a narrow opening while several upright apes yell and hurl rocks at its face. That animal has entered a completely different business model. Humans did this everywhere they could. Cliffs, trees, water edges, carefully, since water came with its own crocodile-shaped problems. Firelit clearings where the open ground gave early warning. They treated the landscape as if it were part of the group. Another set of eyes, another wall, another reason for a predator to reconsider. And that is a pattern you see again and again in the human story. We are not the strongest animal, but we are extremely good at making the environment do part of the work. Then came fire, and this is where survival gets interesting. Fire is so important that it is almost impossible to talk about it without accidentally turning it into a superhero. It cooked food and gave warmth. It extended the day and changed social life. But in a world of predators, fire did something else entirely. It redrew the boundary between the camp and the dark. The evidence for early fire use is complicated. Burned material can come from natural fires. And not every ancient ash layer means someone was sitting there roasting dinner. But some of the strongest evidence comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, where researchers found signs of burning deep inside the cave, in sediments roughly 1 million years old. By later periods, evidence for repeated and controlled fire use becomes much clearer, and once humans could reliably keep fire, the night changed in a way no other animal had ever managed. Not because fire created an invisible force field. Predators can approach fire. Some animals are curious, some are desperate. Fire is not magic, but fire is weird. It moves. It crackles. It smells. It produces smoke. It throws shadows that shift for no obvious reason. It creates light where there should be darkness. And for a cautious predator evaluating risk in the dark, a firelit human camp is full of unfamiliar signals. Unfamiliar signals are expensive risks. An animal that ignores an unfamiliar signal and gets hurt pays a price it might not survive. So most of the time, most predators chose the simpler option: walk away. Fire also let humans stay awake longer together. And that part is easy to underestimate. The campfire was not just a heater. It was a gathering point where people watched, listened, talked, repaired tools, shared information, and kept the group psychologically stitched together. The animals outside the firelight were not the only ones using the night. Humans were using it too. Now, this is where the story takes a turn, because the human body itself is not as useless as it first appears. Yes, we are poor sprinters. A horse beats you. A lion beats you. A hyena beats you. A frightened house cat in a hallway might beat you if the stakes are low enough. But speed is not the only kind of animal power. Humans are unusually good at endurance. We walk efficiently. We can travel long distances. We sweat, which lets us dump heat in a way many mammals simply cannot during sustained movement in hot conditions. Our long legs and upright posture are built for covering ground. Researchers have argued that endurance running may have played an important role in the evolution of the genus Homo, possibly emerging around 2 million years ago. That does not mean every ancient human was casually running down antelope every Tuesday. The endurance running hypothesis is debated, and we should not turn it into a cartoon. But for the predator question, the broader point holds: humans were built for persistence, and persistence changes survival in a way most people do not expect. A predator can outrun you in a burst. Fine. But what happens after the burst? The predator stops. It pants. It overheats. Meanwhile, the human is still walking, still sweating, still cooling, still coming. Humans can track. They can follow. They can remember which direction something went, come back with others, and turn today's encounter into tomorrow's plan. That is a very different kind of danger, one that does not end when the sprint is over. Now add tools, and the balance tilts further. The earliest stone tool-making goes back at least 2.6 million years, probably earlier, depending on which discoveries you include. Oldowan tools were not fancy. Hammerstones, cores, sharp flakes. But even a sharp flake changes the rules. It turns hands into cutting tools. It turns carcasses into food. It turns bones into resources. It lets a small primate do things teeth alone cannot. And the technology did not stay simple. By the Middle Pleistocene, we find astonishing wooden weapons, like the Schrenningen spears from Germany, discovered alongside butchered horse remains and dated in the hundreds of thousands of years range. These were not random sticks. They were carefully shaped weapons, and that matters for the predator question, because tools do something biologically rude. They separate damage from the body. A lion has to bring its weapon with its face. A human can hold the weapon at a distance. A pointed stick means a predator cannot close the distance without consequences. A thrown stone means danger can arrive from several meters away. A spear means the soft animal suddenly has a hard extension that can bite before contact. This is one of the great human tricks. We outsource our teeth. We outsource our claws. We outsource danger into objects. Once you can do that, your body does not need to look terrifying for you to become terrifying. But here is the real turn, the part that actually explains why predators learned to walk the other way. The key to human survival was not that we became stronger than predators. We became worse to attack. Those are very different things. A predator does not need you to be invincible to leave you alone. It only needs you to be costly. Think about a leopard deciding what to hunt tonight. It wants food. It does not want a spear in its side, a rock to the skull, 5 screaming relatives chasing it into the bush, or a fire-smoke noise combination that could leave it injured and unable to hunt next week. A single human might be edible, but a human group not profitable. That is the whole secret. Humans survived by becoming a bad bargain. Not impossible prey, not superhero prey, just risky prey. And in nature, risky is enough. Except, and this is the part that complicates things, it was not always enough. People were still killed. Children were still vulnerable. Crocodiles still waded at water. Leopards still took chances. Hyenas still investigated. There was no point in prehistory where nature signed a peace treaty and politely agreed to stop eating people. The bad bargain strategy only works when everything lines up. The fire stays lit. The group stays close. The shelter holds. The tools are at hand. Take away any single piece, and the equation shifts back toward the predator. A lone individual caught at a river's edge at dusk is not a bad bargain anymore. That person is an opportunity. A child wandering just slightly too far from camp is not protected by the group. A night when the fire dies and no one notices is a night where the old rules return. So the defense was real, but it was fragile. It demanded constant vigilance, constant maintenance, constant cooperation. One lapse could undo everything. The margin for error was thin, and the penalty for error was permanent. Survival did not require perfect safety. It required enough safety, enough children living to adulthood, enough adults surviving the night, enough knowledge passing from one generation to the next, enough mistakes remembered. Which brings us to the advantage that may matter more than all the others combined. The one that does not fossilize. The one no predator could see coming. Memory, a gazelle can learn. A chimp can learn. A wolf can learn. But humans built survival out of shared memory. If a predator came near camp, people remembered where. If someone was taken near water, the group remembered when. If a certain cave was safer, they returned. If a certain animal moved at dusk, they adjusted. And here's what made it powerful. That information did not die inside one skull. It moved. Through gesture, through imitation, through teaching, eventually through language. A human group was not just a group of bodies. It was a memory system. That is enormous, because predators are dangerous in the moment. Humans became dangerous across time. One bad night became a rule. One close call became a warning. One attack became a story told around the fire, until every child knew where not to walk after sunset. A spear can be found. A stone tool can be dated. A burned bone can be analyzed. But the sentence, "Do not go there after dark," leaves no archaeological trace, and it may have saved more lives than any single weapon ever made. This also helps explain something strange about the modern world. Something you may have noticed if you have ever walked through a forest and realized everything went quiet. Ecologists talk about the landscape of fear. The idea that animals shape their movements, feeding, resting, and vigilance around perceived danger. And modern studies show that human presence can be an incredibly powerful danger signal, sometimes more powerful than the presence of actual apex predators. Researchers have found that some wild animals respond more strongly to human voices than to the sounds of lions or wolves. In certain experiments, human sound alone, just a recording of people talking, can make animals abandon food, flee, or completely change their behavior. That does not mean ancient predators had some mystical genetic memory of humans from day one. It means animals learn risk, populations learn risk, ecosystems learn risk. If humans repeatedly make themselves dangerous, the world starts behaving as if humans are dangerous. And that feedback loop may have very deep roots. At first, ancient humans feared the dark. Then, slowly, parts of the dark began to fear them back. So here is the full picture. Ancient humans survived not because of any single advantage, but because they stacked advantages until the total cost of attacking them outweighed the reward. Group living made them harder to isolate. Defensible terrain made ambush harder. Fire made the night stranger and safer. Tools made close attacks costly. Throwing made distance dangerous. Endurance made escape and pursuit more flexible. Memory made every encounter useful. Teaching turned one person's terror into everyone's knowledge. None of these made humans unbeatable. Together, they made humans deeply inconvenient. And inconvenience is the most underrated force in evolution. A predator does not need to respect you. It only needs to hesitate. That hesitation is a crack in the door, a second to shout, a second to stand, a second to grab a stone, long enough for someone else to wake up, long enough for the group to become the group again. Over hundreds of thousands of years, those seconds accumulated into survival. So the next time you feel uneasy in the dark, that little pulse in your chest when the room goes black, that sudden alertness when you hear a sound outside, that strange certainty that something is behind you even when nothing is there. Do not be too quick to mock yourself. It is not elegant. It is not rational. Not most of the time. Not in the modern world. But it is old. It comes from bodies that had to take the dark seriously. Bodies that learned the night was not empty. Bodies that survived because they listened before they understood. You are here because countless people before you were scared at exactly the right moment. Someone woke up. Someone heard the branch break. Someone kept the fire alive long enough. And someone remembered and passed it on. And because somewhere, a long time ago, a predator looked at a small group of soft, upright animals huddled around a dying fire and decided just this once, not worth it. That is how ancient humans survived, not by being the strongest thing in the dark, by becoming the one meal the dark had to think twice about.